Holy shit! In the next 90 days, Coinbase's ex-chief technology officer believes that Bitcoin will go to $1 million per coin. Balaji, who believes Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million in the next 90 days due to hyperinflation, is betting against James Medlock, a social democrat. These are the terms of the bet. The odds are 40-1 against Balaji. James will buy 1 Bitcoin. He will send $1 million. The wager will be monitored by an agreed-upon custodian. Why would Balaji take such a crazy bet? Let's break this down in monkeys and bananas terms. Number 1, Balaji thinks that banks are lying to you, the depositors. Number 2, Balaji thinks the problem is that there's not enough in the banks on a mark-to-market basis to cover withdrawals. What does that mean? What this means is that the money that you deposited into the banks, they took and invested in assets that no longer hold the same value. This is very similar to when Sam Bankman took customer deposits and invested it into shitcoins and other assets that didn't match the value of the customer's initial deposit. While the entire world was making a fortune off selling NFTs of rocks, meme stocks, real estate prices flying, banks were getting flooded with deposits. And while banks are getting flooded with all of this money, they had to invest it in treasury yields and bonds. And if you don't remember, interest rates were near zero for over a year. And when interest rates are very low, bond yields and treasuries are very low as well. The Fed always knew that at some point they were going to start to have to raise interest rates to combat inflation. Flash forward to 2023, now we're seeing these regional banks start collapsing that over-leverage themselves by investing their customer deposits in treasury yields and long-term bonds that have heavily depreciated. Worst thing that can now happen is for customers to panic and go and withdraw the money, which would force the banks to have to sell those treasury yields at a loss. Banks and customers are now facing serious risks because for every dollar you deposited, you may not get that dollar back. Balaji says that the banks saw the crash coming, but were allowed by regulators to hide their literal insolvency. Balaji thinks banks are trapped. If they invested in treasury yields in 2021, they got wrecked. If they're investing in short-term treasuries now, they're going to get wrecked. They're in a trap. The worst part about this is that they had this very clear since November of 2022. Months ago, they knew that these unrealized losses that banks were building and building at some point would have to be realized. That moment is now. And they sure as hell are impacting many of our institutions. With all that information, Balaji thinks we're now going to enter a period of hyper-Bitcoinization. What this means is that the world redominates Bitcoin as digital gold, similar to the model used before the 20th century with physical gold. And this will cause large funds and other sovereign countries to hedge against hyperinflation using Bitcoin in the coming weeks. Bitcoin has officially decoupled after a year from the S&P 500 and NASDAQ, up 70% year to date, while the S&P is up only 2.4% and the NASDAQ is down 13%. Some people think Balaji is crazy. Others are with him. Imagine if Bitcoin went to $1 million in the next 90 days and we saw everything unfold. On top of this, one of the largest global banks in the world, Credit Suisse, is now being acquired by UBS for $3 billion that has just been updated. If you don't follow Gur Gavin on Twitter already, make sure to do so because he is providing unbelievable updates in real time about this situation. If you invested $10,000 in Credit Suisse at its peak, you now have $61. Sounds like someone who invested in an NFT of a rock. My opinion, this is all going to come down to the people's confidence in the banks. If people panic and run, things are going to get very ugly. I can't even wrap my head around Bitcoin going to $1 million in the next 90 days, but you cannot ignore the facts. I'm sure you've noticed in my past videos that I'm extremely bearish on the current market environment and don't think things are going to get much better anytime soon. For those of you who made it this far into the video, please let me know what you think below, what you think is going to happen, and thank you so much for all the recent support on our videos.